Ahoy, and welcome back to Leia's Library. Find yourself a cozy corner, get yourself something nice to drink, and let's get started. Today we will be going over all of the books that I read in November of 2022. That's it, that's all. Let's get into it. So the first book that I finished in November was Whoa! Let's try that one again. A Venom, Dark and Sweet by Judy, which is a YA fantasy, and it is the sequel to A Magic Steeped in Poison, which I read a couple months ago, over the summer, I think. So that, to sum it up very, very quickly, it is a world in which the magic is tea-based. So the magic wielders of this world, called the Shen they get their abilities based on what kind of teeps they steep and what kind of teeps they steep? Based on what kind of teas they steep and what they add to the tea. So we follow this one, Shen Tu, which is like an apprentice, Shen Shi. I think I'm pronouncing both of those incorrectly. I'm so sorry. Named Ning, who has just entered a competition to become the palace's head Shen Shi in order to save her sister back home, who is dying of an illness, or who was poisoned. Actually, she's dying from being poisoned. So yeah, that's a very brief summary of the first one, and this one still follows Ning as she risks everything to save her kingdom from an ancient evil. So I really liked A Magic Steeped in Poison. The only real problem I had with it was the very, very rapid romance. So I was really looking forward to this one, but admittedly, I don't think I was in the right headspace for this. I also spent the first 120 pages or so just trying to remember what happened in the first one. So that wasn't great. And I remembered very few names outside of Ning. So I was kind of always at a loss because these character names would just be dropped as if I was supposed to remember exactly who they were, and I did not. I'm sure it would be better on a reread if I had just read the first one, or if you read them back to back, I'm sure it would be a much better experience. But me reading it right now, I didn't super enjoy it, which was disappointing because, like I said, I really liked A Magic Steeped in Poison. I just found myself not invested in the story at all. I didn't remember any ancient evil being mentioned in the last one, except for like a tiny, tiny thing towards the end. So for that to suddenly, or what it felt like to me, it was very sudden, but for that to be the main thing about this book, it just felt like a very different story from the first one. And again, I'm not saying that it wasn't at all foreshadowed in the first one. It's just, if it is there, I must have forgotten it because I went several months without, in between actually thinking about it. I don't really remember anything that happened in this book. Oops. Make of that what you will. I gave it a 3.5. Hopefully that's justified. Next I read I am struggling with pronouncing today. Whoa. Next I read Ready When You Are by Gary Lonesborough. Which is a YA LGBTQ plus contemporary romance. It is about two Aboriginal teenage boys, Jackson and Thomas, who meet one summer on the Mish where Jackson lives. Jackson's life is going pretty alright until Thomas arrives and forces him to confront his darkest secret. So obviously Jackson's darkest secret is that he is gay. That's not a spoiler. This book is marketed as LGBTQ+, and it is in the dust jacket description. So yeah, his secret is that he is gay, and he doesn't want to admit it to himself. By the way, I'm very sorry if you hear it's raining really hard outside right now, and it's very windy, so I'm sorry if any of that drifts in. I hope it's relaxing. Anyway, I'm glad I read this book, because it offered a perspective that I have never encountered before, that of an Australian Aboriginal teenager, and an Aboriginal queer Australian teenager, whatever order those adjectives go in. English is hard. Kudos to anyone learning English as a second language. Cheers. So, yeah, anyway, I enjoyed it as sort of from a cultural aspect. I just don't think I was the right audience for it, which is fine. Not every book is marketed for every audience. And contemporary romance isn't really my preferred genre, so already it had that against it for me. And it means that you can take my review with a grain of salt. If you're someone who enjoys contemporary romance, and especially queer contemporary romance, then I would encourage you to check it out. Especially if you're looking for an Achillean love story about two Aboriginal teenagers. This would be great for you. It just personally wasn't really for me, even if I did like the setting and the characters. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. Next up I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which is a gothic horror. It is about two sisters, the gentle and agoraphobic Constance, and the younger and wilder Mary Cat, which is a cute nickname for Mary Catherine. Both of them live a very secluded life with their senile uncle after a tragedy hits their whole family and has the whole town gossiping about them and conspiring against them. Their new stable lifestyle is threatened, however, when an estranged cousin named Charles makes a surprise visit. This book is so eerie, it's so haunting and twisted. It feels like taking a stroll through someone's neuroses. I love the characters. Each one has their own peculiar habits that make them so fascinating. Uncle Julian is stuck in this loop of reliving the family tragedy, and he's just focused so much on every detail of it, trying to solve this mystery, that he just doesn't really retain new information. Constance is so gentle and so caring to a fault. And Mary Cat is just a feral little witch child, and I'm obsessed. This book feels very claustrophobic. It all takes place in this house, or 98% of it takes place in this house. So it ends up feeling like you are stuck in this house with them, with all the eyes on the town, just like peering in, watching you, judging you. And as the book goes on, every character gets a little more twisted. It starts out kind of sort of straightforward, and then every now and then there's a tiny little where someone says something or does something that makes you go, wait a second, did I read that right? There were lines where I had to reread like 2 or 3 times and be like, oh, okay, that happened. Yeah, things just keep building and building until the climax, which is devastating as it is kind of disturbing. I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5. Next book I finished was Dracula by Bram Stoker. For those of you who are unaware, Dracula is a classic horror. It is about, it's about a bunch of characters, but when one of them, Jonathan Harker, goes to Transylvania to meet his new client, one Count Dracula, in order to help him buy a house, he makes several shocking and disturbing discoveries, and soon afterwards, strange phenomena begin happening around London. A ship is wrecked off the coast of Whitby. A local mental asylum resident begins speaking of his master's arrival, and a woman discovers strange puncture marks on the side of her neck. So I was actually reading this through the event, I guess, called Dracula Daily, which is basically just like a giant book club for the whole world, but we all read Dracula, and only Dracula. So the way Dracula is written, it is a series of diary entries, and they're all dated. So Dracula Daily sent you an email with the chapter on the day that matched the chapter's date. So you got to read the story like in chronological order, and in time with the events that were happening. So it was a very cute idea. So I signed up, and it was free. So I signed up, or actually I really wanted to sign up, but I was worried about missing them, so my partner signed me up for me, and I really appreciate that. Because it was a great time. And I got to reread Dracula, which I haven't read since I was like 14 or 16 or something. Overall, I quite like Dracula. It's not my favorite by any means. Frankenstein has my whole heart in terms of classic horror. There are a lot of unfortunate trademarks of the era in this book that Frankenstein doesn't have. Like, there's a female character who is at once very infantilized, but then also put on this pedestal as like the paragon of feminine beauty and gracefulness, and everyone's in love with her because she's so pretty and so gentle and so dainty. Poor Lucy. She deserves better. And there's also the trope of the dangerous foreigner coming to wreak death and destruction to good, jolly old English soil. That didn't age very well. But there's also a lot of interesting things in the book. As like a complete foil to Lucy, there's Mina Harker, who is one of my favorite literary characters. She's actually a very active character with a lot of agency, especially as a female character. And she is definitely in like the main character list, and she makes a lot of decisions, and she, you know, things do happen to her that cause her to be more involved in the story, but on the whole, she's just in it. She's one of the boys in, well, I hate that saying one of the, she's in it. She's doing her thing, and she's doing great. And the slow burn horror of it, where we're given just one tiny little morsel at a time, that was really well done. I'd say overall it's a very good story with some sizable flaws, but I quite like it, and I think most classic lovers will also like it. Also, if anyone tells you, as I was told when I was like 15, that Dracula is a love story, it's not. And please ask them why they think that, and if they need help, because there is no, Dracula is not a romantic character. I don't know where people keep getting that. It's not, no. Anyway, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Kiki's Delivery Service by Eiko Kadono, which is a middle grade / children's fantasy. It is about a half-witch named Kiki who has just turned 13 years old and sets out on the traditional coming-of-age journey of witches, which is to live for 1 year by herself in a new town. With her faithful, wisecracking cat companion Gigi at her side, Kiki sets out for a new adventure, but soon learns that being independent may be more difficult than she initially thought. This is just so cute. If you're familiar with the Studio Ghibli movie of the same name, it is shockingly similar. I would say that I preferred the film. I just like the way it ties everything together, and it has sort of one overarching message. Whereas the book is more episodic, so pretty much each chapter is a different delivery that Kiki does, and the life lessons that she learns along the way from doing that one delivery. It's still super adorable, and they're similar enough that if you really enjoy the movie, you'll probably also really enjoy the book. And I would highly recommend it, whether you've seen the book or not, because it's very cute, and it's full of all these like really charming little life stories, and I just really like it, and I love Kiki so much. I give it 4 out of 5. Next, I read A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Littlebadger, which is a YA magical realism fantasy. We have 2 main characters. One is Nina, who is a Lipan girl who lives in our world. She has always believed in the old stories, and the more she learns about her family history, the more she thinks they may be tied to the spirit world. Meanwhile, our other main character, Ollie, a young cottonmouth snake person, lives in the spirit world. And after having been cast out of his childhood home, he's on his own for the first time and struggles to find a new home for himself. Neither have any idea that the other exists, But when a catastrophe hits that threatens the life of one of Ollie's dear friends, the two worlds will connect in a way that they haven't in centuries. So the interesting thing about this book is that it draws on traditional Lipan Apache storytelling structure, which it explains in the book that instead of it being sort of one story with a solid beginning, middle, and end, like most stories that we're used to, it's more like a meandering through various highs and lows of the characters' lives. So there is like an ending climax, but like before we get there, there's a lot of like just like meandering and like highs and lows, and yeah, we're just like taking a stroll through these people's lives. And the storytelling is woven together so beautifully that it never feels slow or like there's nothing going on. I really like this author. This is the second book that I've read by her. The first one was Alatsue that I read probably back in June, I think. I think she's one of my new favorite authors because I really like the two books that she's put out so far. The characters and the worlds that she builds are always so fascinating. Like with Alatsue, I just want to visit this world and like maybe live in it forever if they let me, but at least visit it at least once. So yeah, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read in November was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley, which is a YA mystery thriller. Is thriller the right word? Maybe? Definitely a mystery though. Mystery fiction? I don't know. Anyway, it's about 18-year-old Donis Fontaine, who has always felt like a little bit of an outsider. Her mother is a white woman, and her father was an Ojibwe man, so she's often seen as too white to be Ojibwe, but too Ojibwe to be white, so she's never quite fit in anywhere. She's hoping for a fresh start at college with her best friend Lily, but all that changes when Donis witnesses a murder, and Donis ends up agreeing to go undercover for an FBI investigation into a lethal new drug. I'm so glad I read this book. I love when a book can not only give me a good story, but also teach me something, and I feel like I learned a lot about Anishinaabe culture from this book, and as someone who lives on unceded territory, I really do value that. This is one of those stories that's filled with a lot of pain, but also with a lot of beauty. Donis and her town go through so much, but they always find, comfort in each other, and there's this strong sense of community and connection between them that creates this overall atmosphere of no matter what happens, we will persevere, we will survive, which was so lovely even in its tragedy. The characters are so real. Like, I feel like I know these people. I feel like I've met these people before. I have two problems with this book. One is that towards the beginning, when it's revealed that someone Donis knows is actually an undercover investigator, she's furious with him for lying to her, but like, that's his job. And I get that she has trauma about it, but she's saying things like, how can I trust anything he says when he lies so easily? And like, girl, he's investigating a murder. He's not lying to be a jerk, he's lying so he can save people. And if it hadn't gone on for so long, I would have let it slide, but this was an ongoing issue until like midway through the book. And it really annoyed me. I just felt like it was doing a disservice to Donis's intelligence, because throughout the rest of the book, she proves herself to be very intelligent, both, book smart, but also very emotionally intelligent. It felt like it was undermining that for her, which was just kind of disappointing. The other thing that bothered me was that Donis is very... I hate to say this, but she kind of has the I'm not like other girls vibes going on. She has only disparaging things to say about the hockey girlfriends. And because she doesn't interact with very many girls outside of them, those are the only things that we hear her saying about other girls her age, who aren't herself or her best friend, or her family. So yeah, it just... we don't need to keep doing that in 2022. Although, to be fair, this was set in 2004, I believe, or 2007. but it came out in 2022 or 2021, so we don't need that anymore. One important thing to note is that there is an act of sexual assault in this book. It's not graphic or detailed. It's handled with a lot of care, but it does happen, and it is referred to afterwards until the book ends. So just something to be aware of if that's something that you're sensitive to. It happens on page 371, so you can just skip that page and it will still be referred to, but you won't read it. So if you're still interested in reading it, which I would encourage you to do if it sounds like you would enjoy it, you can just skip that page. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'd recommend it to anyone who's interested in mysteries, or in learning about Ojibwe culture. Yeah. And those are all the books that I read in November. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what your favorite and least favorite was down in the comments. Yeah, keep it interesting. If I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be We Have Always Lived in the Castle, shortly followed by A Snake Falls to Earth. And a least favorite would be Venom, Dark and Sweet. Yeah. So let me know what yours are. If you'd like to find me elsewhere, you can find me on Instagram at Leia Like the Princess, where you can also find my little art and embroidery store, which is perfect for right around the holiday season, at Moonlit Cat Creations. Or you can go directly to its website at moonlitcatcreations.com. Thank you again, and until next time, stay cozy.